It's hard to be an introvert in our modern society. In Western culture, everyone seems to respect, value, and idealize people who are extroverted. They place them up on a pedestal and say that everyone should try to be an extrovert. If you look at our educational system, we're taught in schools in big groups of people, and we often have to do big group projects. The big trend in workplaces nowadays is to have an open workspace. So you're always surrounded by other people. You never have a private space to focus on your own stuff. If you look at TV shows and movies, and especially reality TV, they always reward people who are able to grab attention and be famous, even if they're famous just for being obnoxious, not for having any real skill or talent. So we live in a culture where we have an extrovert ideal. And if you are an introvert, this can make you feel like you are not okay. Like it's not all right for you to spend time by yourself. You always need to be out being social. You need to fit in and conform to this extrovert ideal that our society or culture has, or else you feel bad about yourself and you feel guilty. All right, so now in the past few years, there's been a reaction to mainstream society. There's been an explosion of online articles and books that talk about the power of introverts. They talk about how you should learn to understand how you work as an introvert so that you can play to your strengths and play to your advantages. And that you shouldn't try to change a lot of parts of yourself which are built in. So I think that these books about introversion, which are now very popular and trendy, they were necessary because we have, overall society which is going the other direction. So we need these authors to balance it out. However, I believe a lot of these books and articles about introversion go too far in the other direction, and they confuse introversion with things which are completely unrelated to being an introvert. So in this video, I'm going to clear up 10 myths that you might have about what it means to be an introvert. So myth number one is that being an introvert means that you are uncomfortable in social situations. Let me be clear. Back when I had really, really bad social anxiety, if I walked into a group of people or I went to a party, I would instantly start to feel very tense, uptight. I could feel my heart start beating faster. I'd be nervous before the social situation. I'd be very uncomfortable inside the social situation. That wasn't because I was an introvert. That was because I had social anxiety. So if you feel uncomfortable in social situations, it's a sign of shyness or social anxiety, which is essentially a fear of disapproval. It's not a sign of being an introvert. Being an introvert just means that after a while, your energy is drained in social situations. So after a couple hours at a party, you might start to feel like you can't really talk to people as much anymore, and you're just feeling very low energy. But that's a much different feeling than feeling nervous before a social situation and being uncomfortable inside the social situation. Make sense? Myth number two is that being an introvert means that you are quiet or withdrawn. The most popular one of these books about the power of introverts is actually called Quiet, and it's written by a woman named Susan Cain. And I think it's very unfortunate that she named her book Quiet because it equates an external behavior, being quiet or not talking much, to being an introvert. And inside her book, she even gives a lot of examples of famous movie stars, stand-up comedians, and other performers who are able to go on stage and be very charismatic, expressive, even though they're introverts. So that brings me to myth number three, which is that you can tell if someone is an introvert based on how they act in social situations. In my experience, this is simply not true. If you see someone at a party who is standing off, beside a wall, sipping a drink, and they look scared to go meet somebody new, they look tense and nervous, that is not a sign of them being an introvert. That is a sign that they might have a fear of rejection, or they might have shyness or social anxiety, like I mentioned before. I don't think you can tell if someone is an introvert based on how they act around people, really. Usually you can tell if someone is an introvert more based on how they act when they are relaxing. So an introvert might go to a party and they have no trouble meeting new people, carrying on a conversation, even talking in group conversations, except after an hour or two, when they go back home, they're not going to be calling up another friend. They're going to be by themselves, maybe watching a movie, reading a book, doing something alone so that they can later recharge. Myth number 4 is that it's better to be an introvert. This is actually one of my pet peeves. A lot of these articles and books about being an introvert, they actually sound like people who were bullied for being quiet back in school, now trying to get back at all those extrovert people. And they make out extroverts to be stupid, basically. And they think that if you're an introvert, you're automatically smart and intelligent. Well, look, if you're an introvert, you might think to yourself a lot, but that doesn't mean that you're having profound and important thoughts. You might just be thinking about the same dumb bullshit that an extrovert might speak, except it's all inside your head. It doesn't mean that you're inherently any more intelligent or smart just because you are an introvert. Myth number 5 is that introverts are super sensitive people. And yeah, introverts might be more sensitive on average, but often this doesn't mean that they're sensitive to other people. A lot of introverts can simply be very sensitive to their own emotions, and they're very self-absorbed in what other people think of them. They just become like a bubble, and their sensitivity or their empathy doesn't really extend out to other people. So in many cases, this sensitivity isn't really a positive trait. Myth number 6 is that all extroverts are shallow. You can get this idea if all you do is go to, let's say, a bar where people are already halfway drunk and they're just talking about whatever is in their head. So you might get the idea that all extroverts are shallow in comparison to quiet, thoughtful, deep, and intellectual introverts. This isn't true. I mean, the extroverts might be able to get your attention more, and if there is a dumb extrovert, then it's very obvious that they are dumb. But there are many shallow and dumb introverts too. You just don't hear most of their thoughts. And there's a lot of extroverts who are out using their extroverted nature to change the world and accomplish great things. Myth number 7 is that introverts are socially inept. I see this a lot where people will use being introverted as an excuse for why they are socially awkward or unable to hold a conversation. I think that a lot of people use introversion, being an introvert, as an excuse for not having to change, because change is hard. And if introversion isn't really something that you can change about yourself, but overcoming social anxiety and getting social skills is something that you can change over time and with work and practice. Yet it's easier to say that everyone else is a problem, it's not me. Myth number 8 is that introverts don't like going outside their house. Being an extrovert is not the same as being outgoing. You can be an introvert while at the same time being outgoing, having friends, having a social life. The difference is that if you are introverted, you do need bigger doses of alone time to recharge. It's almost impossible to be happy or feel good about your life if you don't have some friendships. And introverts tend to like a smaller amount of close friendships, whereas extroverts can be satisfied with a bigger amount of more superficial friendships. If you don't have friends and you neglect your relationships, it's unhealthy. You just have to understand the difference between what an introvert might like in a friendship and an extrovert, and work on cultivating the types of friendships that you want. Myth number 9 is that extroverts are bad listeners. I thought this too for many years, and in fact I had one friend in particular who's very extroverted, and he would often come to me and like talk and talk and talk about let's say a problem that he was having in his life. He would talk so much I could barely get a word in, and I thought a lot of extroverts are just bad listeners. But after I did some research, I kind of realized that extroverts and introverts deal with problems in their life a different way. So the way that I usually deal with problems is by thinking it out in my own head and working through it alone, whereas extroverts usually go to other people to discuss their problems. And I've met a lot of extroverted people who, because they spend so much time around people, their social skills are very well developed, and they can ask questions and really listen to people in a way that connects with people well. So they definitely can be good listeners. And a lot of introverts, including myself for many years, I wasn't a good listener at all. When someone else was talking to me, I wasn't really paying that close attention to what they were saying. Usually I'd be thinking in my head of what I could say when they stopped talking so that there wasn't an awkward silence. And that's not really being a good listener, is it? Myth number 10 is that introverts can't be leaders or public speakers. And this brings me back to that book I mentioned before, Quiet by Suzanne Cain. Her book starts off good, but then later it kind of turns into a self-help type book that talks about how to overcome fear of public speaking. As if every single introvert is afraid of things like public speaking, just because the author was. And that's where a lot of this introvert articles and books go wrong. They tangle the ideas of, let's say, conflict avoidance, fear of taking risks, maybe other fears like public speaking, lack of social skills. They confuse them with introversion. And that basically brings me back to the overall point of this video, which is to say, if you feel lonely because you don't have the types of friends that you want, or you don't have the type of romantic relationship that you want because you find it hard to meet new people and get dates, or if at your workplace you want to ask for a raise, or you want to be able to communicate better, or you want to speak up in meetings and so on and so forth, you can absolutely learn how to do all these things. You know, be more confident, make friends, meet people, network if you want to, even if you're an introvert. Now, if you're perfectly happy and satisfied and comfortable with where you are in your life, then great, you don't have to change a thing. But if you do feel like you are uncomfortable in social situations, or you feel like you aren't satisfied with what you have in life, whether that's your social life, your dating life, your career, then you can absolutely improve your social skills and eliminate your shyness or social anxiety to the point where you can function just like you would think an extrovert can. You can be talkative, you can be outgoing, you can be charismatic, you can be expressive, even if you are an introvert. In fact, I'd encourage you to read these books about introversion so you understand the way that you work better, and you know how to recharge yourself so that you can socialize with people more effectively. But being an introvert is not an excuse to be withdrawn, to be shy, to be reserved. And if you do want to improve, then subscribe to this channel, and in my future videos I'll be giving you practical tips for how to do that. My name is Sean Cooper, the Shyness and Social Anxiety Guy, and I'll talk to you again soon.